We all love a good haunting, but what if the scariest part isn't the demon, but the question of whether it was ever there at all? The true story behind The Conjuring, Last Rites, is a chilling rabbit hole, so buckle up, because we're about to take a deep dive into the haunting world of The Conjuring. The All-American Nightmare. Before it was adapted into a movie, the story of The Conjuring, Last Rites, was a real-life nightmare, and it didn't unfold in some gothic, decaying mansion. The true events took place in a modest duplex on Chase Street in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, the home of Jack and Janet Smurl. In 1973, the devoutly Catholic working-class couple bought the home after losing their previous one in a flood. With their 4 daughters and Jack's parents living next door, they were the picture of the all-American family. The house was supposed to be a fresh start, a safe haven, but within months, that dream began to curdle. Before the Smurls, the house had a history, though none of it seemed overtly sinister. It was built in the early 1970s, and the family who lived there before the Smurls reportedly experienced nothing out of the ordinary. However, Jack Smurl's father, who lived in the attached half of the duplex, later claimed he had heard strange noises and felt an unnerving presence for years. Even before his son's family moved in, he had simply dismissed it as the house settling or his imagination. This detail is crucial because it suggests the phenomenon wasn't entirely dependent on the Smurl family's presence. It adds a layer of credibility to the idea that something was intrinsically wrong with the location itself. Furthermore, during their investigations, the Warrens claimed to have uncovered a darker local history, including a murder that allegedly took place on the land before the house was even built. While historical records to back this up are shaky at best, it became a cornerstone of their theory that the land itself was tainted, providing a foundation for a demonic entity to take root long before the Smurls ever turned the key in the front door. It started small, with the kind of bizarre inconveniences you'd dismiss as bad luck. Tools would vanish only to reappear in strange places. Radios flickered on and off, and a stubborn stain materialized on a new carpet. But over the next decade, the activity escalated from strange to deeply sinister. A disgusting stench like rotting flesh would fill rooms and then disappear. The family's dog was reportedly thrown against a wall. The daughters began seeing shadowy figures floating in their rooms. The phenomena turned violent and personal. Janet claimed she was grabbed and thrown, and Jack reported a horrifying sexual assault by a succubus-like entity while he was watching TV. Neighbors even reported hearing screams from the house when the family wasn't home. The Smurls' all-American dream had become a living nightmare, and they were trapped inside. Enter the Warrens. By 1986, after more than a decade of escalating terror, the Smurls were at their breaking point. Desperate, they reached out to the most famous paranormal investigators in the world, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed, a self-proclaimed demonologist, and Lorraine, a clairvoyant, were legends in the field, associated with the country's most infamous hauntings. When they arrived at Chase Street, they weren't just investigators, they were the family's last hope. The Warrens' investigation was a whirlwind of prayers, provocations, and paranormal technology. Ed would challenge the entity directly, demanding it show itself, while Lorraine would enter a trance-like state to psychically see the spirits haunting the home. They brought in tape recorders, hoping to capture disembodied voices on EVPs, and used a crucifix as a spiritual barometer, claiming it would grow cold in the presence of the demonic. They documented dozens of phenomena, crucifixes being flipped upside down, drawers violently flying open, and the temperature in rooms plummeting without explanation. One of their most dramatic claims was capturing an audio recording of a pig-like squealing, which Ed identified as a clear sign of a demonic entity mocking them. For the Warrens, the evidence was overwhelming, painting a picture not of a simple ghost, but of a calculated, intelligent, and malevolent force. They ruled out common causes like occult practices or family tragedy. Instead, they landed on a more esoteric theory. A powerful demon had been lying dormant in the house for decades, only to be awakened by the potent spiritual energy of the Smurls' devout faith and their adolescent daughters, a classic poltergeist trigger. Lorraine concluded that 4 entities were present: a harmless old woman, a violent young girl, the spirit of a man who died in the home, and pulling all the strings, a powerful demon using the other 3 to terrorize the family. Convinced they were dealing with a full-blown demonic infestation, the Warrens brought in a priest, Father McKenna, who had performed over 50 exorcisms for them in the past. But the ancient rite didn't cleanse the house, it just made the demon angrier. The family was now in what Ed Warren termed the second stage of demonic activity, oppression, with possession and death waiting at the end of the line. The media circus and the skeptics. With the church officially unwilling to help, the Smurl story went public, and their private hell became a national spectacle. Headlines like "Demon in the Duplex" and "Haunted by Hell" were plastered across newspapers. TV crews, reporters, and paranormal enthusiasts descended on their quiet street, turning their lives upside down. But with the spotlight came intense scrutiny. Many believed the family was faking the entire thing for money and fame. Enter Paul Kurtz, a leading critic and the chairman of the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, CSYCOP. Kurtz launched a full-scale investigation, determined to find a rational explanation. His team uncovered several mundane possibilities. The foul smells neighbors had complained about for years were traced to a broken sewer pipe. The strange noises were often heard near the teenage daughter's room, suggesting a possible prank for attention. Kurt's suspicions grew when the Warrens actively blocked his investigators from entering the house, despite the Smurls giving prior permission. They also refused to share their supposed audio and video evidence, giving vague excuses. The fact that the Smurls had signed a book deal seemed like a smoking gun, suggesting a financial motive. Kurtz concluded that there were plenty of possible explanations that didn't involve a demon. The lingering mystery. This is where the story gets truly complicated. If it was all a hoax for money, it was a terrible one. The Smurls never made significant profits from their book or the subsequent TV movie. What they did get was public humiliation from their neighbors, their church, and the press. They endured years of torment, both allegedly paranormal and very public. Why would any family go through that unless they genuinely believed they were under attack? The narrative became even more tangled. The Catholic Church eventually investigated, and in 1989 officially stated they found no evidence of demonic activity, banning the Warrens from further involvement. Yet the Smurls remained convinced. They claimed the entity was attached not to the house, but to their family, following them even when they temporarily left the home. This detail adds another layer of intrigue. Was it a demon, a hoax, or something else entirely? Some modern trauma experts suggest that extreme psychological distress can manifest as what appears to be a haunting, a physical projection of unresolved trauma. Could the demon have been a metaphor for a family's internal suffering? The psychological alternative. Beyond the binary choice of demon or hoax, a third, more complex theory emerged, one rooted in human psychology. Some experts have suggested the Smurl case could be an extreme manifestation of shared trauma. Consider the context. The family had lost everything in a flood just before moving in. This was a profound trauma, leaving them financially insecure and emotionally vulnerable. In this fragile state, it's possible that the series of mundane but stressful events in the new house, the strange noises, the faulty appliances, were interpreted through a lens of fear and religious belief. This theory doesn't suggest they were lying. Instead, it posits that the family might have entered a state of folie à famille, a shared delusional disorder where a group's collective anxiety creates a feedback loop, reinforcing and escalating a perceived supernatural threat. Every strange event would be seen as confirmation of the demon, and their deep Catholic faith would provide the language and narrative to define it. The entity in this view was not an external spirit, but an externalization of their internal suffering, a real terrifying monster born from stress, trauma, and the desperate need to find a reason for their misfortune. The unsettling end. The story of the Smurl haunting doesn't end with a dramatic final exorcism or a clear resolution. In 1989, the family finally moved away, and according to them, the moment they left, the activity stopped for good. This ending is perhaps the most unsettling part of the entire saga. If the demon was attached to the family, why would moving to a new house suddenly solve the problem? It's a contradiction that fuels both believers and skeptics. For skeptics, it's the final proof that the haunting was tied to the house and its mundane problems, or that the family simply decided to end the charade. For believers, it leaves a chilling question mark. Did the demon simply give up? Or was the family's collective belief and fear so tied to that specific location that leaving it was enough to break the connection? The Smurl case remains one of the most psychologically disturbing and morally ambiguous files in the Warrens' collection. Unlike other cases, it forces us to confront uncomfortable possibilities about long-term mental trauma, collective delusion, and the terrifying line where the human mind ends and something else begins. The real horror of The Conjuring Last Rites isn't just the story of a demon in a duplex, it's the fact that decades later, no one can definitively say what truly happened on Chase Street.